I'm Victoria Alexander. I'm the owner of Realty Collective, a real estate brokerage that's here based in Brooklyn, New York. I've owned the company for 16 years. I'm a small female founded business that tries to break the barriers associated and stereotypes associated with real estate brokers in New York. We only work with small mom and pop landlords, only individual owners and sellers, and not developers or anybody that's using housing as a profit business, for-profit business. So, and then I'm going to introduce my two cohorts, Rashida and Lisa. Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure. My name's Lisa. I am a mortgage officer at Cross Country Mortgage. I specialize in first-time home buyers. I love helping people buy their first home. I do deals all over New York City. I do co-ops, I do condos. I also do deals throughout the country. So that's an option too if you are moving or you're looking to buy outside of New York City. And I'm really looking forward to answering your guys' questions.
Great, thank you. Rashida?
Hi, everyone. My name is Rashida Sadiq. I am a real estate attorney. I have been practicing over 18 years now. I represent a lot of first-time buyers. So I always say, give me the questions. I'm here to, try to explain the process as smoothly as possible as well. I represent both clients that are purchasing in New York and in New Jersey. My office is downtown Brooklyn. And just looking forward to, giving some more information on, especially as being a first-time buyer, the process and where we come in as your attorney and getting you to that closing table.
So the three people on this call are the three people that you need to make up your team for a buyer. You need a real estate attorney, a mortgage professional, and a real estate broker. We have been working together for a very long time. I feel I've done the most amount of deals, the three of us, than I've ever done in my career as a team. And it's been really amazing to work with other strong women to help people achieve their goals. And that is our main job, is to help you facilitate your goals of homeownership. And we don't care where, when, but we do care how. We want to make it as least stressful as possible, make you feel supported, and help educate you along the way so that you feel confident in your decision making. At the end of the day, you have to live in this property, and the decision is up to you, but we help you have confidence in your decision making and guide you through this process. I always see myself as like a coach or a therapist, holding people's hand as they go through this process and try to alleviate and make it as easy and stress-free as possible. But we all know buying real estate in New York is none of those things usually. First slide. Oh, that's us. So first slide is why buy now? The rent's too high. Rents have started bouncing back and going back up. You get to design it yourself. Good long-term investment. You see your appreciation and your equity grow. So anybody else have any reasons why they might be buying now? You can put your answers in the chat for us. Next slide. The rent versus buy matrix. So we have a calculator that's provided by the New York Times. You can put in your specific details. If you're in a rent stabilized or rent controlled apartment, it might not make sense for you to buy in New York City because you're never going to reach the same investment levels that you would if you were buying. So you're in that sort of situation, lucky you. But it is there for you to use as a calculator to help figure out what you should be doing for your goals. Next slide. So assembling your team. So besides a real estate attorney and a mortgage professional, you might need an architect, a contractor, an inspector. Most important thing you're going to need is lead time. The one thing that people always want to know is how much do these people cost? Your real estate broker for a buyer is included in the purchase of of the apartment purchase, and the seller pays those fees. So you have closing costs on the purchase and the sale side of your home, and just know that that is already calculated in. So you don't pay me anything, which is the good thing. Do you guys want to talk about what usually the fees are associated with working with you?
Sure, I can go first. So, yeah, that's always a question I get like during the first conversation. So, you don't pay me until a deal closes, and you actually don't pay me. You pay my bank. It's through the application or commitment fee or underwriting fee, some other banks call it. But the difference between working with a lender and working with the broker is that you're not actually paying points towards cost. So that's a lot like of terminology, but the shorthand answer is having a conversation with a mortgage professional should and always will be, for me at least, free. And any costs associated with the transaction happen at closing, which means that unless the deal closes, you don't pay for it.
And then just for your attorney, obviously you are paying me for my services, well, the firm as well. So an attorney fee can range depending on the type of transaction and the type of property as well. Because if you're buying a house versus a co-op or a condo, there's different types of work that we have to do for each transaction. But I would say a beginner range is typically around $2,500. Plus, depending on the type of, as I said, type of property, whether it's new construction, whether it's new development, whether it's a house, whether it's a co-op or a condo. But you should always have a conversation with your attorney in the beginning to find out what's their fee, what does it include, if there's any additional costs such as power of attorneys or disbursements and things like that. And for my firm, what we normally do is we will send you an email so you have it in writing what the legal fee and what the services are. So it's clear on what you expect to get from us. We do require a retainer, which is typically non-refundable when you're buying a co-op or a condo, because our work, especially in the beginning of due diligence, we actually do that work. So we've run over the contract, we reviewed the minutes, we reviewed the offering plan. So it's actually work that we've done. So that's why we typically do require a retainer so we can start and complete that work.
And I just have to say, the reason I work with both of these women is that their rates are really competitive, that they're not hidden fees. They're not slipping in, hey, there's a cost if we have to go read the minutes offsite that's added. There is a cost for FedExing. There's a cost for this and padding usually the flat rate that's supposed to come from a lawyer or from the mortgage professional that are hidden. Lisa's not adding on points underneath or anything like that. They're very transparent about their fees up front so that you know what you're getting. And I think it's really important to understand what to ask these professionals so you are prepared to make an educated decision about who to hire and work with. And I think honesty is a big part of it. And personality type, making sure that when you're hiring these people, that you like them, that you feel comfortable with them, and that you like the answers that they're giving you, you understand the answers, and that they're not making you feel scared that if you don't work with them, you're not going to get the most amazing apartment or house ever. So next slide, please. Financing. This is all you, Lisa.
So you have decided that you want to jump into homeownership. You've talked to Victoria, and the first thing Victoria is going to say is talk to me, because it's really, really important for you to talk to a mortgage professional before you start looking, so that you don't look at places that are beyond your budget, because that's not really fair to you to look at something that you can't afford the mortgage for. And simultaneously, you don't want to undercut yourself and think that you have a budget where maybe you can go higher if you want to. So the first thing you need to do is talk to a mortgage professional. What we'll do is mortgages are actually very personalized. I'm going to really take a lot of information from you to really understand your income now, your debt now, what you're looking to buy, how long you think you're going to live there. All of these things come into effect or are important to getting you pre-approved and finding you the right program. Typically the standard is to put 20% down. That's not necessary. You can put, if you do FHA, you can put as little as 3.5% down. You can go conventional and still put 5% down or 10% down or 15% down. So if you put less than 20% down, you're going to have some form of mortgage insurance, most likely. which basically means it's either upfront that you pay at closing, or more typically it's a monthly mortgage insurance that's included in your housing payment. And that comes off once you're at 80% equity. If you have FHA, you have the mortgage insurance until you refinance. So these are all the sort of conversations we'll have when we go through the pre-approval process. A few really, really important things when you have your first conversation with me or a mortgage professional. We want to know any important details related to your income. So are you on maternity leave right now? Will you be on maternity leave soon? Will you be paid during maternity leave? These are important things to know when we get you qualified. Are you a US citizen or not? That is important for first types of programs. So if you're not a US citizen and your mortgage professional forgets to ask you, please make sure to talk about that, because that can be important. Where's the down payment coming from? These are all the kind of conversations we'll have to get you pre-approved. Your credit will be run. You will get a pre-approval, and then that pre-approval is really a working draft. So as you go out and see things with Victoria, we will fine tune what that pre-approval looks like. So until you find, the right house, the house you want to put an offer on. Then once that happens, it sort of becomes a live deal. We'll talk about that in a second. But in terms of COVID, one thing I do want to talk about right now. So with Hurricane Ida, there was damage to lots of properties throughout New York State. So you need to know when you're going through inspections and stuff that you want to make sure when you go through that, and Rashida and Victoria will talk more about that, is there things like storm damage? Because that's something that's going to come up on an appraisal, and you want to know about it prior to going into contract so that you can negotiate as needed. Besides that, everything, is actually almost back to pre-COVID times, knock on wood, in terms of financing, and rates are still amazing. So I'll talk more about the rest of the process in a sec.
Rates are still amazing. And me and my client, who, Lisa, you got their appraisal waived, went and looked to make sure at her apartment today, make sure there wasn't any damage from Ida or Henry, and that the repairs that we asked for were done. So I think that is a new part of the process now that we're experiencing since the storms last, so 3 weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago. So next slide. Where do you search? So you're working with a real estate broker, not because they have some magic access that you don't have on the internet, because New York State has an MLS, but it's still broken up by counties usually. So you can be part of the Delaware County or the Hudson Valley County MLS, but they have not created a platform that is all working together. And that's why Zillow and other platforms are trying to dominate the market, because they see this opportunity. So in New York City, what we have is the RLS, which is the Rebney listing platform, but it still is not comprehensive. If you're looking out like in Canarsie or in Midwood, the listings might not be on the RLS. They might not be even on StreetEasy, because there isn't a multiple listing service that has joined all of those neighborhoods together. So I'm going to sign you up for our back-end search, but it's not going to be comprehensive. And so I have clients still looking on realtor.com and on Zillow and Trulia and sending me listings. And that isn't my job really to find you things that don't exist anymore. The internet's changed all those hidden gems that used to only come out in the Village Voice or on Craigslist. So you're really looking a lot yourself sometimes, setting up alerts. And then you're also getting the back end search that I'll set up for you as well. That should be as comprehensive as possible, but it's still going to not encapsulate everything. So scroll down. Let's see, next slide. I really like StreetEasy. I think it's a really user-friendly platform and easy to work, but it depends also on the neighborhood you're looking in. We aggregate as much of the results as we can for you. And then there are some ways to cover off-market listings. Like if you're interested in a specific building, you're like, I'm in love with 34 Plaza. I only want to live in that building. There are ways to encourage people that are on the border thinking about selling in there to get them to sell to you. That is one way we've helped people. So how are you going to find your dream home? Location, type, amenities, all the things that you put into your search criteria. And I'm assuming that a lot of people's criteria has changed since COVID. A lot of people right now are looking for outdoor space, close to the park. They want something that's finished and has all of the amenities that they're living without now. And then what else? And just to keep in mind when you're going to look at listings, that the seller's broker is representing the seller. So the agent that's there representing the property, they have a fiduciary responsibility and they work for the seller, where on the other hand, I would work for you and help guide you through the process as they are doing for their seller. Next slide. Oh, I skipped some parts, but I'll go back to it. So co-ops are 1 to 3% closing costs. So if you're finding your dream home and it's a co-op, those are the closing costs you can be prepared for. It's on average about $4,000, 3 to 5% for condos. Sellers also have closing costs and usually they're about 8%. So calculate it into your idea of what you would possibly sell for in the future when it comes time to do that. And then when I'm telling people to looking for property, then they're thinking about building typology. If you're looking for a condo, you're going to have your higher closing costs, but you're not going to have restrictions on renting. So if you have a possibility that you could be moving out of the city in the future, maybe a co-op's not for you because there are restrictions usually with co-ops on how long you can rent and sublet for. If you're looking for a doorman, you're probably going to be looking for a co-op building. You're going to look in Brooklyn Heights or Prospect Heights, maybe Park Slope, but probably not Williamsburg. Not a lot of doorman buildings in Williamsburg. There's now virtual doormans though. And then understanding new construction and new construction fees and costs associated with that. There are a lot of extra expenses, but also a lot of value in buying new construction. And then I always tell people to make the list of their 5 deal breakers and then realize that you'll probably only get 2 or 3 of the things on your list unless you don't have a unlimited budget. So making an offer and negotiating. Rashid is going to tell you everything needs to be negotiated before she gets a deal sheet. And that will mean making sure that your offer is contingent on financing, contingent on an appraisal, contingent on an inspection if you're going to have one. Is there anything, do you guys want to talk a little bit about the things that need to come into an offer that they should be aware of?
Well, I can just kind of go into what typically as an attorney, once we get the deal sheet, what we want to see on that deal sheet, and then from there, what we kind of encompass into the contract to make sure that that's on the deal sheet. Just for you guys, a deal sheet, basically you've been working with your realtor, you found the property, they've negotiated kind of the price and the terms, additional terms, and they put together all of this one pager with all of the information so that the attorneys are now coming into play and can prepare a contract of sale based on that information. So you're not in contract until it's signed by both parties. So even though a deal sheet has gone out, you're not actually the seller or the buyer. You're not actually even obligated to go forward with the transaction, as I said, until you're actually fully in contract and has been signed and the down payment has been given. So just for when we get a deal sheet from the realtors, it typically will have buyer's information, the seller's information, if they're getting a mortgage, the percentage of their mortgage, if there's like inclusions as far as like particular appliances or light fixtures or things like that, that may go on it. If there's any specific kind of things that were negotiated as far as like staying after the closing, those type of things will go on the deal sheet. But for attorney, what we're looking for, definitely for you, your contract has contingencies. And one of the main contingency is your mortgage contingency, which means that if you're not able to get a mortgage within a certain time period, you have a right to cancel the contract and get the return of your deposit. So what we want to make sure is that that's in there if you have a contingency for your mortgage. I've seen some ways also part of that mortgage contingency is the bank doing the appraisal on the property. We've seen where sometimes it's negotiated that the appraisal part of that is taken out. And that's a conversation you definitely want to have with your attorney, because now if that portion of your mortgage is taken out and the bank does the appraisal and it doesn't appraise for the price, you still have to go forward with it. Even if the bank says, hey, we can't give you that mortgage because it didn't appraise, you're still obligated to go forward with that transaction or your down payment is at risk. So you want to have a conversation with your attorney in regard to that mortgage commitment time period, in regard to making sure that also it has appraisal contingency in there. Prior to signing the contract, and this is a lot for New York, is that you have to do your inspection prior. So before you even sign the contract, whether it's a house, I definitely, you 100% you want to do it for a house. Condos and co-ops, I do strongly advise. I get pushback sometimes whether clients want to do an inspection for a condo or a co-op, but I do strongly advise you do that because you're still obligated to, if something's in the unit, you taking it in as is. So you want to do that inspection, and all of that happens prior to you signing, because if you do your inspection and you find out things aren't working, or maybe the electrical isn't up to date, now you have to do renovations that you weren't thinking about, you can negotiate the terms or renegotiate some repairs. So those are things you want to have done before you sign your contract of sale, because your contract has as is, you've done your inspection or you waived your inspection and you're taking the property in the current condition. So that's one of those pre-contract terms that you want to make sure that you do prior to you signing doing your inspection. And then post-contract, you want to make sure definitely you have your mortgage contingency in there. If you're buying a condo or a co-op, there is contingencies in regard to getting the approval for the co-op by the board. So that's typically unconditional approval. So your attorney can discuss with you the timing of when you have to submit your application to the board, what has to be submitted. They should hopefully get a copy of the application. Your realtor also can get that for you, so you know what requirements, because I had one situation recently where it was a co-op. The person was getting 90% financing. A lot of co-ops still do require 80, but this particular, they were told it was 90% financing. I did my due diligence. The management company confirmed 90% financing. When the client went through all of the application, they came back and said, oh, we made a mistake. It's 80% financing. And this client had went into contract when we did our due diligence. We did the best that we can, because even the application had 90% financing, but they updated it within the time we were in contract and changed the requirements. So, we were able to still get them to make that exception for her because she was in contract. We had in writing from the management company what that, all of this stuff. So they were like, oh, sorry, but she was able to still go forward with the transaction. But things like that, get in your application, making sure that you have that, provision in the contract regarding the co-op approval. All of those things you want to make sure that you're in contract, and those type of things are on the deal sheet as well. Just thinking what else. Really, for COVID, I think most of the kind of the contingencies that we've had regarding the only main thing that we're still doing is particularly having like maybe remote closings, because some attorneys still are not back in their office, more of the bigger firms, and some of the bank attorneys are just traveling, or the management companies are still doing remote closings. But I would say now we're back to maybe 80% in-person closing, and more of the bigger kind of like new construction, they're doing remote closings still, but you're back in in-person closings. So we're still doing wires though, with down payments, which is a thing to make it a little easier.
I didn't get the memo, or else I would have come to my closing this week. But I know that one of them got delayed. It was supposed to happen on Friday and then got pushed because they got their lawyer, not you, gave them the wrong information for the checks. And then the sellers called me and they're like, I thought the closing was happening. I was like, this news to me that it's not happening. But I heard it was all resolved, and these things happen, but it's really important to have a confident team and have people that are experts in guiding you through the process. So please let me know so I can come to the closing. So I guess I should be showing up now.
No problem.
Yeah.
But I was just kind of back up on what you just said about having an attorney that knows what they were doing. That closing, I was the seller's attorney on that deal. And the buyer, unfortunately, the attorney really did not know what they were doing. So we had to adjourn it to Monday. And then even on Monday, the attorney still did not know what they were doing. And both myself, the bank attorney, and the title closer had to kind of step in and explain it to the buyer. And the buyer still had to run out and get checks because the attorney got it wrong again, 3 times actually.
And that's crazy because they fired the first attorney that I recommended to them because they thought that person was incompetent. So this was their second attorney that they were going through, and they had used them on another deal and like swore up and down that they were the right person to do it. But then the buyer said, "Oh, my attorney messed up." So at least that they knew where the fault lied. So thank you for making sure that we all got there, even though they were dropping the ball.
Yeah,
it happens.
That's the point of having a good attorney, so you can step in sometimes and clean up the mistakes.
Yeah, 100%.
So you can still
really
close.
Important. They were so thankful. My clients were so thankful. So after you put in your offer and then with your contingencies, the deal sheets go out to the attorneys, and that's when Rashida would start doing her due diligence. We'd do the inspection and negotiate if we needed to from there, if anything did come up. But then you would be signing the contract and putting down usually 10%, and most people are putting down 20% but then you'd put the other 10% down at the closing. You need to have 10% to sign the contract. So having those funds liquid is super important. You then are in Lisa's hands, and we'll be getting all of your documents and everything to her to make sure that they have every single piece of paper to get the bank to give you the loan. And Rashida's doing the back end research on the minutes and you're doing like title. What happens after contract signing?
So I was going to say, basically now you're in contract. The first step that's going on is Lisa's handling the mortgage on that end. So as the buyer, you're directly dealing with your loan officer. And then as your attorney, a lot of it's going on behind the scenes. So in the background, I'm handling the title report, making sure that gets ordered, making sure it gets over to the bank in time, making sure it gets over to the seller side. So a lot of the things are in the background, and your contract will have typically either 30 to 45 days for you to get your mortgage. So your main focus as that is working with Lisa, your mortgage broker, to get them what they need so they can get it within that time period.
Lisa, do you want to talk about what you're doing after the contract is signed?
Totally. So we've already talked and started the process before contracts are signed. Why? Because there's a lot of documents that the bank needs from you. And I want to have all of that. I want to know that the deal looks great and is perfect, and there's not going to be any underwriting issues before you go into fully executed contracts, so that we don't have any delays. Once you have fully executed contracts, then on my end, it's called a live deal. So that means that we are ordering the appraisal. We are getting you initial disclosures to e-sign, and you are working with me and my team to get you through underwriting as quickly as possible. I think one of the things that really makes me and my team freaking awesome, to be honest with you, is just how fast we are in getting you through underwriting. And that's important because that protects you. The sooner you get through underwriting, the sooner you know that, you have a mortgage approval, you have met the commitment date that's stated in your contract, and you can start getting this, ready to close. So you will need a lot. I'm actually refinancing right now, and I close on Thursday, and there's a lot of paperwork. I'm not going to lie, no matter how you go about it. And I tried to make my file as simple and beautiful as possible. There's a lot of paperwork. And what you need to know is that we are not asking you for anything that the underwriter isn't going to ask for. So we want to have everything ready so the underwriter doesn't have to come back for more. You will have questions, but I'm here to sort of walk you through everything. And then once you get the approval, there'll be a few conditions. If it's a co-op, we'll be waiting for board approval. We'll be locking you in, and then you'll be getting ready to clear to close. And we will work with Victoria and Rashida. We'll work with the attorneys to schedule the closing. And one thing I will say, because once we get the clear to close, I'm sort of like, I've done my job, people. Let's get this closed. But one thing I will just say, with Rashida talking about the last attorney, is that's why working with a team that works together a lot is really, really important, because things do come up. And Rashida and I had a deal yesterday that had a few issues at closing, and she called my cell and I called her right back and we figured it out. So it's really, really important, because there will be things that come up, but as long as you've been really clear with your loan officer about getting us the stuff that we need, it will be, you know, as I tell everyone, that my job is to make this as quick and painless as possible.
That's true for all of us. I think that's our job. And I really appreciate, again, I wasn't at the closing yesterday, you guys really rallying and making sure everything went as smooth as possible for our amazing clients that you had a really great turn time for that deal. We met all our deadlines that the seller set for us, and then the seller delayed even further. So it's sort of wild that they're like, we're going to close first week of September. They have all these contingencies in the contract that we have to close and meet these deadlines. And then there's no recourse for the buyer after they dragged it out past that. It's wild. And I'm so thankful that we all work together to make it as seamless as possible for these buyers, because it was a very trying deal and one of the hardest ones I've had this year, actually, with the other side of the deal. I think then what happens after so we talked about what happens while you're in contract. Then once we get the clear to close, after both the bank and the lawyers have signed off on all the paperwork and we're good to go, we do a final walkthrough with me to make sure the apartment's being delivered in the state that we expect it to be. Check all the outlets, make sure all the appliances are working, and give the sign off to the attorneys. If something isn't perfect or isn't working, we ask for a credit or a repair, something of that nature. And then we have the closing. And at the closing, your hand's going to hurt because you're going to sign a gazillion documents, and then you have keys and you will be a homeowner. And it's very exciting. And one of the best decisions I've ever made. I often talk on these workshops about the hoops that I jumped through to purchase my home. There was a lot of them, and I never regret that decision ever, because I would not be able to afford to rent my house now. My mortgage is way less than I would be paying if I was renting it. It's crazy. I'm so glad I had a good real estate broker. Tina from my office was my agent, because even an agent needs somebody to guide them and help them feel confident in their decision. I was a single woman when I was buying my house, and I'm so thankful that I had that guidance and coaching to get me to make that decision, because it was not my first choice of property to buy. I think that's it. We have a couple of links we're gonna send out and resources. Again, when I work with people, I set people up in a project management tool called Basecamp to help guide you through the process. It's a library of resources. We set you up with our back-end search. We're going to send out a guide called the Brooklyn's Home Buying Handbook that I've written, that has tons of information that you'll read for a really long time to get through, or you can call us and ask us any questions and cut to the chase. What else do I have to say? We're going to ask if anybody has any questions. You can take yourself off mute or put them in the chat now, and we can answer your personal questions. Anybody? And I think that Farage is going to drop a link in the chat to schedule a one-on-one call if you want to talk after this. I'm going to say there's no questions because nobody's putting anything in the chat. Do you suggest, I'll wait for you to finish your question, Michael. I think you hit enter too soon.
And I think Paulette has her hand up.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody has their hand up. Paulette,
Hi.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I sometimes get turned around in using these Zooms, but the question I have, I wasn't able to get on from the beginning. And so I am from California. And of course, the buying process is completely different there. And so my question is, I happened to see this in some platform that I was on, but do you handle properties that are on Long Island as well? I basically came on this just so I could see how different it is from California.
I know that Rashida and Lisa definitely probably handles properties in Long Island. I helped a buyer during COVID buy something in Oceanside, but they were looking at properties themselves and had found the property. I just had to help them negotiate the deal. But it's not something that I would say is my expertise is Long Island, but I could also help you refer you to somebody out there that might have a little bit more guidance on the specific area. It's good to know. Like I know Brooklyn, like the back of my hand, I could help anybody buy anything in Brooklyn, but I'm sure there's nuances in Long Island and especially in California. In California, the real estate broker actually writes the contract.
Yes.
There's like, and same thing in North Carolina, like my friends that were asking me, there wasn't a lawyer involved, which it's a lot harder to get your real estate license in those states because you have to have extra knowledge on these things. I don't feel as comfortable talking to those things because I don't have that expertise. Rashida or Lisa, do you have any California?
I'm actually from California, so
you know it well.
That's why I was like giving a little hands up. So yeah, it's totally different. I do Long Island. You should definitely reach out to me to schedule a private talk, and I can sort of talk you through the differences and the differences in team, obviously, as well as timeline. So, but yes, I do work in Long Island.
Okay, can you put your contact in the chat or do I leave my email in the chat? How do you want to do that? Oh,
yeah, it's on the slide, but I'm happy to, I'll put my contact information in the chat as well.
Yeah, Farah, just put your email in the chat, but you're going to get an email. Anybody that signed up for the class today, even if you did not come, is going to get an email with all of our contact information and a whole bunch of other resources. So we're easy to be reached.
Okay, yeah, for some reason the Zoom is not showing. It's kind of stalled and it just says Victoria Alexander has started sharing her screen, but I'm not seeing anything.
You have to hit chat on the bottom. There's a chat
that
box.
happened to me too.
Yeah, I asked if there was anybody that happened to, but maybe you didn't even see the chat box to see it's there. But
I can see the chat box now.
Okay, yeah, and Lisa's email and phone number are in there.
Okay. Okay, I'll just I can take a picture, but you said you're going to send an email.
I'm going to email it, Paulette. Yeah.
Okay, great. That'll be great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And Michael, I think your question was, do you recommend everybody buy?
Well, what I meant was, I mean, you're an attorney, I get that rent is more expensive than the mortgage for somebody with a 30-year fixed mortgage with interest rates what they are today. However, not long ago, I was paying nearly $11,000 property tax as well, not to mention home insurance.
I think it depends on those sort of costs for you. I know, especially with like new construction, the taxes can be really high. I'm lucky I'm in Red Hook and I bought an adaptive reuse project. So my taxes are actually really very, very low for New York City. I think you need to, that's why we have that rent. You might have missed it. The first or second slide is a rent versus buy calculator. So you can put in the numbers and see what is better for you. I always say if you're staying in New York City, that's the market that I know. If you're staying here then and you plan to have a long-term life here, that buying should be a priority for you. Otherwise, the expenses for renting and other things will continue to go up, and you don't have any leverage or control. The landlord can raise your rent, can push you out, and you'll lose your home. And buying is taking control of that situation and saying, this is where I want to live, this is where I want to have roots and want to, have a future here.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, but yeah, you're smarter than me and you're better connected and know more about real estate. So you knew to look in Red Hook. I didn't.
But I also just knew I loved it.
Do you know a good real estate agent?
Yes, I am a real estate agent. I'm a real estate agent. That's me.
Oh.
The other people.
I thought you were the attorney. I'm sorry.
No, that's Rashida. Rashida's the attorney. I'm the real estate agent. And I even had an agent when I was buying. I had Tina in my office. She was my agent to help me, guide me. I lived here in Red Hook and I loved it. And this is where I knew I wanted to buy. And she helped me figure out how I could do that.
You have to take that crosstown bus though, right?
I have a car.
Unless you drive.
I have a car. A lot of people in Red Hook have a car. But since I've lived here over a decade now, I bought my house in 2009, 2010. And Rashida was actually the lawyer that worked with me at the time to purchase my home. Red Hook's changed a lot, and we only had a bus at that time. And now we have the ferry, a commuter ferry. We have Revel, we have city bikes. So transportation has gotten a lot easier for Red
Right.
Hook.
No, back then, you got in like when it was still where the mafia dumped the bodies.
2010 was definitely, it was a lot. It was very nice at 2010. I've heard stories, and it wasn't that bad when I moved here.
Yeah.
Or else my parents would, so I had to have my parents co-sign my loan. Because since I own my own business, I don't always have the best financials. So as I was saying, I had to jump through hoops to make a purchase. I got in a car accident. I took the payment from my car accident. I sold my old engagement ring, and I took every other penny that I had. And I had to have my parents co-sign the loan with me to be able to buy. I had to pull out all the stops. And I'm so thankful that I jumped through all those hoops to do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be I love my house and my neighborhood and all my neighbors. Even though there was, I did have water during Ida 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, no, I know some of it got flooded. Yes.
Yeah, well, a lot of Brooklyn got flooded. It wasn't just Red Hook this time.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, so that's great that you had all those things working for you to make that happen. Do you have any friends or colleagues who, you guys went through these steps really well, and it's really helpful, the offer, contingency, dealer, inspection, sign the contract, 10% to sign, 10% more closing, mortgage, loan officer, in 30 to 45 days, title report, appraisal, all of that. Okay. Have you had a situation where the 30 to 45 days, one of your friends maybe, is complicated by the fact that they own a home now and need to sell that one to raise the money to buy another one in Red Hook or wherever?
Yeah.
I actually,
Go ahead, Lisa.
so I have a deal that I'm working with that right now as well. It's called, it's basically a simultaneous selling close, which basically means this is the borrower. He actually lives in Montclair. He's selling his home in Montclair and buying something bigger in another part of New Jersey. So we are doing a simultaneous close, which basically means his home that he's selling is going to close the day before or even the day of when his purchase happens, and the money is going to go straight from the escrow account from the sale to the escrow account for the purchase. So it happens all the time. One thing you do have to be aware of if you go that route is that the way this got a little bit more complicated is that the person that is buying his home is selling their co-op in Brooklyn, and he didn't know that. And they have to go through co-op board approval, and they were silly and didn't use me, and it's taking forever. So you just have to realize that when this 100% can happen, it happens all the time because you use the funds from one sale to do another. But you just have to realize that is one of those examples where it's really, really important that you work with a team who knows how to do these things, and everyone needs to know as much information in the early part of the process as possible, because there's a lot of balls in the air, but it happens all the time. And as long as everyone does their job right, it should be fine.
So who do you guys trust as your accountant for when you do sell a house, helping you with things like capital gains and property tax and things so that you minimize those costs?
So
Well, I think, go ahead, Rashida.
Yeah, I'll step back and talk, because I'm the attorney in the group here. So I represent lots of clients that buy and sell a lot of time. I have about 5 of them going on right now. I just closed on another one last week where the clients were buying and selling. Just spoke with a new client this morning that they're going to be doing the same thing. So the main thing that we're doing, especially when you're buying and selling, if you've negotiated where your contract for your sale or your purchase is contingent on the other one, you want to make sure that that's language in the contract of sale regarding that. Your attorney can speak with you regarding timing wise on scheduling the time period to close, because for a house or a condo, you're looking at typically either a 60-day closing. If it's a co-op that one of either your buyer or your sell, you're looking at that transaction maybe 90 days. So when you're putting your dates in your contract and negotiating your contract before you even sign it, you want to make sure that those dates align. Also, as a seller, you have to give your property delivered vacant and broom clean on the day of the closing. But if you're buying and selling, you need to have another clause in your contract, what we call as post-possession, that you're able to stay in your property for a certain amount of days in order for your attorney to coordinate those two closings so that you have the funds from one to go to the next. And that's another special clause that goes into those types of contracts. I'm talking about capital gains and things like that. I always tell my clients, I'm not an accountant, but I can give you a general idea about capital gains. You should definitely speak to your accountant.
Well, no, my question was,
answer.
do you have a good accountant for that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we can give
Yeah.
referrals for accountants, whether, it's, hit or miss sometimes, but I can always give you the name of an accountant because you're going to want to talk about if the property was your primary residence, you have an exemption of that. So if you're an individual, it's a $250,000 exemption. If you're married or a couple, it's a $500,000, $250 each. And then after
Right.
that, you're subject to capital gains. Then also you have to make sure you lived in the property 2 out of the 5 years. If it's investment property, you can do what we call as a 1031 exchange. So there's different ways that you can kind of, definitely have that conversation with your attorney
Well,
and
yeah,
with your
I
accountant.
know every situation is different.
Yeah.
The reason I'm asking is really, I brought up a couple of things with my accountant, who's a nice guy and everything, and does a good job in our sort of simpler taxes with my tenant upstairs, and I own a 2-family house. But when I started bringing up things like, buying land through a self-directed IRA, cryptocurrencies through Erisex and Madison Trust, things like this, just kind of trying to build a better life, a quality of life in retirement on a fixed income, minimizing taxes and maximizing leverage. He seemed a little out of his depth. So I thought maybe you guys know a good attorney.
Yeah,
Accountant.
you mean an accountant. I have a really great accountant. It took me a really long time to find a good
I
accountant.
had to do the whole SDIRA thing myself. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
you're probably
I got
savvier than I
into
am when it comes to
Ethereum in a self-directed IRA because I, researched like 15 different companies myself.
I went
So-
through, I'm on my 4th accountant. I can't say how happy, I'm very, very happy with them. They
It's really
have,
important, right?
yeah, it's very
To
important.
have a good one.
Yes, I realized I got audited in 2008 because of my last accountant. So I definitely know the value of finding this person and I'm very happy with them and I'm happy to give you their information. I'll make sure to make a note to follow up and give you that personally. Wes has some information, but Michael, why don't we chat more specifically about your personal situation offline? Give some other people a chance to jump in and then I'm happy to talk to you further about this.
I wasn't sure if there were a lot of other people with questions. Don't want to be
All good.
selfish.
No,
Okay,
you're not
thanks
being
so much for
selfish.
your
I
help.
know that it's challenging and it's probably been hard to find good people and thankfully you finally have.
I would like to stay in Brooklyn, ladies. So, maybe we'll do business. You know what I mean?
Sounds
But I may
good.
have to sell this house. So,
Got it. Where is this house?
It's kind of the border of Bay Ridge and Sunset Park. I've got Leif Erikson behind me.
Oh, great.
And I'm on Senator Street between 5th and 6th.
Oh, I love Senator. That's such a great block. How lovely. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap up. There isn't any other more questions, but we're hitting the 6 o'clock mark. And so I don't want to keep everybody. And I want to thank everybody for joining and your time. And again, if you have any questions you want to talk about offline, we're all available to talk to you one-on-one to talk about your specific situation. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.